The Callisto Protocol is a 2022 survival horror video game developed by Striking Distance Studios and published by Krafton. It was directed by Glen Schofield, who had previously co-created the Dead Space series. The game's story follows Jacob Lee, who is sent to a prison facility set on the Jovian moon Callisto, fighting against infected prisoners with an unknown disease while uncovering dark secrets of the facility. Also guys, just before we kinda crack on with this whole review, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It would honestly help me out. Thank you so much. Alright then, let's get back to it. Gameplay has players exploring a series of levels, gathering resources while fighting off infected prisoners. Development of the game began with the formation of Striking Distance Studios back in June 2019. Originally developed as a game set in the PUBG Battlegrounds universe along with the company, it later evolved into the studio's own intellectual property with its own original story and lore. So let's address the elephant-sized mutant monster in the room. The Callisto Protocol is effectively a Dead Space game in everything but name, with Striking Distance Studios even being led by the Dead Space co-creator Glen Schofield. From the neatly minimalistic HUD, which grafts Jacob's health bar into the back of his neck like a phone battery indicator, to the stomping of crates and corpses to uncover precious resources, to the combat system that heavily relies on battery-powered telekinesis ability that allows you to hurl objects around with a flick of Jacob's wrists. There's even evidence of a mysterious religious cult that's somehow involved in the outbreak, and instructions how to kill enemies left blood smeared on the walls. It stops short of introducing Isaac Clarke's stasis ability and swaps his collection of weaponized mining implements for a more conventional arsenal of pistols and shotguns, but it otherwise feels very familiar, and as someone who's played all the Dead Space games, it made for a campaign that was heavy on startling jump scares but light on any major story or gameplay surprises. The biggest deviation that the Callisto Protocol makes from Dead Space's terror-fueled template is its increased emphasis on the melee combat, at least during the opening hours. With weapons and ammunition initially scarce, dispatching each snarling cellmate demands that you lure them into an uncomfortably close proximity, sway out of the way of their clawing attacks, and then encounter with some fury blows from Jacob's stun baton. The thumbstick-based dodging and the blocking of incoming attacks feels a bit like ducking and waving in an old-school retro fighting game. The story is very linear and, to be honest with you, it's quite predictable. I'm just gonna give you a quick rundown without any spoilers. So the year is 2320. Jacob Lee and his partner Max Barrow are contracted freighter transporters working for the United Jupiter Company and co-pilots the UJC Charon. They have recently been ferrying shipments of an unlabeled volatile cargo between Europa and the UJC-operated Black Iron prison on Callisto, and their latest run promises to be lucrative enough for them to retire. After clearing the Callisto security perimeter and setting course for Europa, the Charon is boarded by the Outer Way, a group reportedly responsible for numerous terrorist attacks on civilians, and the ship is forced to crash land back on Callisto's surface. Max is killed, leaving Jacob and the Outer Way leader Donnie Nakamura as the only survivors. Both are recovered by Black Iron Prison Security Head Captain Leon Faris and incarcerated without charges or trial on the orders of Warden Duncan Cole. Jacob awakens after the grueling intake process to find the prison being overrun by hostile biophages, which are other inmates afflicted with an unknown disease. He encounters Elias Porter, a longtime prisoner who claims to have an escape plan, and they work together to overcome the biophages, the prison security systems, and the rapidly deteriorating prison itself. Now obviously a game like this is not necessarily built around a fantastic and phenomenal story, however it is more based on tension and atmosphere and basically scaring the shit out of the player. Having said that, I don't think the Callisto Protocol is a particularly scary horror game. Watching Jacob's neck get twisted around and cracked like a knuckle is entertaining the first time, then an inconvenience once I realize this death scene repeats and is unskippable. But its multi-layered audio keeps me at a giddy low level anxiety, like waiting for a text or looking at the sun realizing you can't see for a moment after you look away. If I must compare Callisto with Dead Space, and I do actually feel like that, yes, I must do so, then I will argue that these zombies the game throws at you are a lot more similar to the ones you fight in The Last of Us, with slight variations. Dead Space's enemies were disgusting, creepy, disfigured necromorphs that vastly differentiated from the normal humanoid enemies you mostly face in Callisto. The more humanoid a monster is, the more recognizable it is for our brains, making Callisto's enemy variation a lot more normal and commercial. Nothing that you necessarily want to look away from anyway. Yes, you can argue that Callisto does a good job when it comes to tension and creepiness, especially when the music comes in during some of the stealth sequences, especially in early game when you are quite vulnerable and not have many weapons. Unfortunately, the high level of tension isn't sustained once the GRP is introduced. Powerful enough to lift most enemies into the air, this gravity-defying gauntlet can certainly make for some dynamic combat encounters, particularly in tandem with the various death traps and volatile objects that are handily positioned around each area. You might enter a room full of ghouls, lift up one and impale him on a spiked wall, throw another into an exposed grinding mechanism, before finishing off a third by hurling a saw blade through their midsection, all before they've even realized that you were there in the first place. It can be a lot of fun in a jailbreaking Jedi sort of way, and it often produces some gloriously gory results, but it also means that major threats are often too swiftly snuffed out, like your Indiana Jones bringing a gun to a sword fight. However, while the tension is a bit of a hit or miss, what is still often admirable is the getting here and there mechanic, which the game is most interested in. Fighting a biophage is a temporary distraction. Your plan to escape Black Iron Prison sends you flying down sewer drains, stomping through a snowstorm, and through dim hallways glossed in organic matter, fleshy pods, sinuous tendrils, and slime. It sends you everywhere in front of glorious lunar vistas and lit up desktop screens. It makes you want to see more. And on the PS5, Callisto is able to deliver every high shine, nitty-gritty detail with zero issues, or, well, close to zero, as, you know, sometimes my gun would just mysteriously vanish before reappearing. That is also true to some of the zombie monsters, which is ridiculously annoying, and I have died a few times due to some enemies disappearing and then all of a sudden reappearing somehow right behind me. However, let's talk about the fire, and the fire which I made an entire video on because it quite frankly pulled me out of the immersion every single time I saw it. The 30 FPS rendering of the flames in an otherwise beautifully realized 60 FPS world is somewhat gobsmacking for me. I do not know who is responsible for rendering the flames in 30 FPS, and seemingly you cannot tweak any of the performance settings on the PS5 or the PC for that matter to eliminate this problem. But they definitely have a bad point in my book. I desperately hope in a future update they will fix that terrible, ugly, and quite frankly, for some people, a deal-breaking issue. The biophages will pop out suddenly from rattling vents or from an otherwise empty room. They will look like they are frozen and then suddenly be very alive, warm, and murderous. They come in many different shapes: standard decaying with armor on, decaying with projectile vomiting, wriggling at you with snowball-sized erupting pustules on their backs, coming at you looking like evil mutant Axolotl and then turning invisible and reappearing behind your back only to kill you, and then you can have a little scream at your TV before restarting. You are given an arsenal to deal with them, primarily a sizzling stun baton for close combat, a hand cannon pistol, a brain blasting riot gun, a gravity restraint projector, which is the GRP we talked about, that bends gravity to hold enemies captive in the air until you throw them into a spiked wall, or spinning fan blades, or off a ledge. For 15 hours, this feels like a place you should not be in. Everything from the smallest face-hugging grub to the largest monstrosity wants you dead. In the rare moment of respite, where you have enough time to pause and look around, Black Iron Prison delivers a powerful and consistent sense of dread, along with a shot of nostalgia for survival horror games whose plots boil down to trucking on through predictable power cuts, body horror, and cartoonishly evil conspiracies. By the end, there wasn't a lot that I felt new, but I had phantom hand cramps from swinging the electrified baton, and the powerful need to sit down and have a cup of tea. I felt as if I'd survived, which is just what the game is going for. Overall, I am going to give the game 7 out of 10, which is above average. It is nowhere near the masterpiece that I expected. If we're talking about the PC version, which basically everything I said covers it, except there's a lot more stuttering, a lot more bugs. There are actual gameplay sequences where I honestly just had to pause the game, get up from my chair, walk around in frustration, come back, and just live through the incredibly stuttered nature of the scene or the environment that I was in. And as soon as I entered a new area, this would be fixed, and then it would come back in certain other areas. The game has received a patch already, however it is far from perfect on PC, and I really hope that they continue to make it into at least as of a good experience as it is on the PlayStation 5. However, for now, the PC version, I am going to have to downgrade to a 5 out of 10, which is just plainly average. And the reason it will not get the 7 out of 10 PlayStation 5 score is because of exactly these issues. At the end of the day, the game developer is an experienced one, the team behind it was a talented one, and they are selling the game for £70, and it is not acceptable to release a game in this state. Listen, thank you so much for watching and sticking around. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.